You are listening to the Tricorder transmissions. Or leave. Episode 14.
Just what the doctor ordered. Right, doctor? I couldn't have prescribed better.
It's time once again for Shore Leave, your podcast dedicated to the Trek convention community. I am your host, Jeff Hewlett, and tonight I have with me a successful entrepreneur who's just getting started on an intergalactic expansion of her pet-sitting business to Risa. She's my hardworking co-host, Heather Barker.
That was very cute.
I was trying to be creative. It's getting hard to come up with new stuff.
No, that was good. I liked it.
Okay, cool. So tonight on the 14th episode of Shore Leave, we are going to be discussing our recent participation in the We Are Colonies live tweeting event for the release of Leonard Nimoy's documentary For the Love of Spock. But first, I know you guys are all used to us talking about STLV obsessively, but on this episode, we're actually going to be taking a look at other Trek conventions and how they stack up to our beloved yearly Las Vegas gathering. And here to help us do that is the most well-traveled convention goer we know, Marina Kravchuk. Marina, how are you? Welcome to the show.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I almost feel like intergalactic traveler. I expected, like some sort of a big announcement, and yeah, that actually is very good. Yes, convention hopper. Yes,
you're everywhere. It seems like you're everywhere, and I had the privilege of seeing you at Mission New York and STLV. So I feel like I'm almost well traveled. Not quite as well traveled as you, but at least I saw you 2 times.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And I have to say that this year in particular has been unique in terms of convention going, suppose primarily because of the 50th anniversary. So I figured, this is a big year. Let's do it big. So, if I kind of did very careful planning, so it's not like I can go to these conventions every year. And I figured, well, okay, I can do this one and that one. And then I kind of realized that everything got bunched up within like a 6-week period. But yet, it worked out successfully and I did it. So now I'm very happy to talk about it.
So I think that you did 6 conventions in 6 weeks or something.
Yeah. Well, overall, I've had 6 conventions, and over the last 6 weeks, I had 5 of them. I had one kind of just out there in July, and then everything else starting with STLV up until last weekend. It was all conventions.
Which ones have you gone to? Because I know STLV, I know Mission New York, and then I know the Chicago creation one.
Yeah, it all started out with actually Montreal Comic Con. That was the one in July. And even though it is a Comic Con, they did have their own mini Trek celebration because they had, on top of my head, William Shatner was there, Kate Mulgrew, Brent Spiner, Nichelle Nichols, and I think it was somebody else. And they basically did this little thing. They had a special show with, you had to buy tickets separately. And, given that it was all official logos, I'm assuming it was all completely in agreement and licensing from CBS. So it was, a very, very nice little thing that they did there. I suppose little is not a very good word because it was a Comic-Con. They had like 50,000 people over a 3-day period. So it started out with that. And then, of course, we got our big tuna, the Las Vegas. And then it was just one after another. There was Wizard World Chicago, which technically was not strictly Trek.
Right.
I always go to conventions and I try to seek out our people.
Yes.
But in this particular case, they had a very nice Back to the Future reunion panel. And I was really looking forward to that because I missed it at Philadelphia. I couldn't attend Philly Comic Con. So I did that one. And then, of course, there was New York, and then Cherry Hill and Chicago Star Trek conventions.
Cherry Hill, okay. And the Cherry Hill and the Chicago were both creation ones, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So 3 creations out of there, and the Mission New York were 4 dedicated Star Trek cons.
Precisely. And they were all full conventions. Like all the Comic Cons were basically just like a day and a half trips, really. But the Trek conventions were all full conventions.
And did you drive to all of them?
Cherry Hill is drivable, yes. New York, I would just take the train and then park the car, and here I am. Actually, the other way around, but you get the gist. I'm in the area, so it was very convenient. Everything else, I flew to Chicago, flew to Las Vegas, obviously.
Very cool. So it's actually kind of cool to have another East Coaster on the show, and some so used to having so many people from the other side of the country. It's Marina and I are actually in the same time zone, actually in the same state, I believe, right?
Yeah,
New Jersey.
that's correct. Yes.
Awesome, New Jersey representing on Shore Leave.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, in that regard, New York convention was wonderful because we had a lot of local people.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody that I can think of that I know, actually through Las Vegas primarily, but I know that they're here on the East Coast in Connecticut or in Pennsylvania, just generally in the tri-state area. And it was like, well, this is wonderful. We're having a Vegas reunion right here in the city.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
It really was nice to see everybody.
It looked like fun from Colorado.
And it was a wonderful convention. I enjoyed myself very much.
So, as long as I've known you, which is a long time now, you make convention going, you do it every summer. So
Yes.
I'm curious, like, what got you into going to conventions and what keeps you going?
You know what? It all started sort of by accident because let's see, my family immigrated in '98. So at that point, we still had two shows on the air. Both Deep Space Nine was still on, and half of Voyager. And it was all very, at this point, I'm still trying to figure out how exactly am I supposed to kind of adjust myself to this new way of living in a completely strange country. So I became a fan almost immediately. I'd say like within a year of arriving to the country. And then it was sort of like an armchair tracker. That's what I was, because I read the stuff online that I could find in the magazines, and Communicator was still there. I did not go to a convention until 2009. So it basically
Okay.
like a 10-year period between getting into track, becoming a fan, and then actually going to a convention. And like I said, it was completely accidental. I came across a flyer in Barnes & Noble advertising at the time. Well, it became a Cherry Hill convention before it was Parsippany Convention.
Yeah.
Advertising Parsippany Convention. And let me see, it was headlined by Kate Mulgrew and Leonard Nimoy. And I thought, this is amazing. So I went, and that's it. I just caught the bug.
Was
And
it
I've been going every year since then.
was it like around the time of the new film? Like, is that kind of what?
Actually, no. You know what?
Oh, okay.
I first time I saw the 2009 movie was actually on a DVD. As
Oh,
strange as it sounds, because I kind of kept track of what was going on as far as the new timeline was concerned, almost entirely on paper. So
wow.
all my information was through magazines, and of course whatever was popping up online, because at that point, 2009, social media certainly was blowing up already. And then I kind of. I guess we all start with something that's your track. Somebody for me was Voyager. That's what kind of caught me, even though I got exposed to all the series almost simultaneously, because television I found was a wonderful way of how should I put this, acclimatizing to speaking as an American. We're helping with language, because I arrived, I spoke with British accent, and my whole speaking language was very stilted, because it was this disconnect between thinking in Russian but trying to communicate in English. So I watched a lot of television. And it's like little by little, it kind of all got to the point where it was only Voyager, and then I was like, oh, and the Next Generation, and things kind of got attached. So as far as the new timeline, getting into this whole bit, it all kind of came afterwards, and now I have sort of like more or less complete knowledge of everything track. But at the time, like 2009, I started going to conventions. I was going primarily for the Voyager and TNG people.
Okay.
So kind of a lengthy aside, but
I
there you go.
know. No, it's good. I just always wonder, because 2009 was my first year, and I think it was, I can't remember if it was when the new movie had come out or just because of talking about it that my ex-husband and I looked around and looked for a convention. That's how we found STLV, and then wound up going.
Yeah, I was hoping to attend for my first convention to be Vegas,
Right.
because at the time when I was like, well, this thing happened with Parsippany, and I'm like, well, I kind of, my job was already at a sort of level when I could kind of request a whole week off, and
Right.
I could actually financially afford it. And I remember I was actually saying to my sister, I'm like, we're gonna do Vegas. Somehow it skipped my mind that at that point the experience already closed. I mean, it
Yeah.
closed in 2009, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, didn't you hear? So you're not going to get your whole track experience that you're looking for. And I was so bummed out that that particular year, that's it. I only had Parsippany, and I'm like, we'll see what's going to happen next year. And then 2010 was my first Vegas, which was the
Okay.
last time that we actually had it in Hilton,
Yeah.
what used to be
Oh
Hilton.
man, I'm so
Yeah.
bummed out to know that you didn't get to see the Star Trek experience.
No, it's just I have the recordings, those behind the scenes things that people filmed and then surreptitiously posted all over YouTube, and all these little bits and pieces that collectibles that you can still find on YouTube, but yeah, unfortunately, the experience is not part of my experience.
No, me neither. Me neither. And it was so sad. It was so sad
Terribly.
because, like, when I went to STLV that year, they had, they had put up a wall to where you would walk
Yeah,
into the gift shop and everything. And
yeah,
we
it
all
just
wrote, it was amazing. Like, we all wrote little notes, just thank you.
Yes, I remember doing that, and it was just tragically sad because you would see the sign when the monorail would arrive in this giant thing, and I remember I'm still actually a little bit afraid of being in that part of of Strip and seeing the sign gone. It's still
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and every year I kind of go, I'm like, is the sign still there? Because I'm afraid they're gonna just break it up and destroy it like they did with the insides of the experience.
Oh man, so I feel kind of compelled to tell a really quick story, if the two of
Absolutely.
you guys would indulge me
Yeah.
about the
Of course.
experience. So, we had gone a few times. I'd been there several times, but after it closed, I won't implicate anybody else who was with me at this point because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I doubt anybody's going to listen to this that would get us in trouble. But we met up with a few friends of ours the year after it closed at the Hilton, kind of to do a little bit of a morning session, and we all had a few drinks, so we were a little bit emboldened. So we found a door that was not locked, and kind of went inside
Oh my
the
gosh.
old experience area, and everything was gone. And we
Oh
we were
boy.
kind of walking around some access areas in the back of the Las Vegas Hilton, trying to explore back that way, and wound up coming out on a loading dock.
Wow.
It was really weird. But we did find a couple of things out back where Star Trek, the titles were still spray painted on
Yeah.
certain doors and gates. So it was kind of neat
Yeah.
to see
Wow.
all of that stuff. But I think that we were a little emboldened and probably very illegal. So
Yeah. Oh,
glad we didn't get
definitely.
caught.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, so you've been to so many different conventions, and I think we wanted to talk a little bit about them since I've not been to any other creation conventions outside of STLV.
Hmm.
Both of you guys went to Mission New York, and then we've got these different experiences. So I was just interested in kind of exploring what they're like, how the smaller ones like the Creation Chicago and Cherry Hill are different from STLV, different from Mission New York.
Well, I suppose the first word is smaller because
Yeah.
just purely by definition, it's within the hotel and it's not a hotel of any, not even close to the size of what
Right.
Rio is or what Hilton used to be. So it's smaller already, and they never get obviously as many guests.
Mhm.
I mean, over the last 5 years, we've had one average about 100 invited guests at Vegas convention.
Yeah.
On average, Chicago I think gets about 15 to 20.
Okay.
So this year they had, I think, 20 or 22 because I'm thinking because of the 50th anniversary, they made a little bit of a push. Cherry Hill, probably about the same, on average about 15. So already you kind of get this a little bit more intimate atmosphere where you certainly don't have this, you have 20 feet between the first row of the seating and the main stage.
Right.
Technically
Right.
speaking, there is no main stage. It's just a little platform where they put whatever they need on the stage, like I don't know, a stool. Or like Cherry Hill, for instance, had a house band this year, so it was very tight
Oh.
because they had to fit in all the instruments for the band and then also have the space so that the guests can come out once they're announced and the music is played and do their Q&A panel.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, I think that's the first time I think they've done it at Cherry Hill, but it was
Yeah.
very successful. People really enjoyed it. I wish acoustics was better, but let's face it, this is a small hotel with basically conference spaces. It's not
Right.
made for proper concert sound, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's smaller, but the biggest plus is that it is more intimate, and it certainly feels like you have a little bit more access to the guests.
Yeah. So Marina, I've been to Cherry Hill a couple times myself. I didn't go this year, so I was interested in knowing if there was anything different this year than in previous years. And in my memory, they didn't necessarily utilize all of the available space at that
Mm,
hotel for the
not at
Trek
all.
Con. I've
Not
been
at
to
all.
other cons there. I think there's a Monster Mania convention that happens
That's
there, or
correct.
Chiller. Oh, yes, Monster, one of the two of them. But they
Hmm.
utilize pretty much all of the available space in the hotel for that one.
Yeah, and the thing is that if I remember correctly, Monster Mania and Chiller, they're sort of similar in the sense that they have very large number of vendors coming
They
in.
do,
So
yeah.
they kind of have to be, and it's interspersed with those signing tables where they have the invited guests. In case of smaller creation cons, you actually don't have as many vendors anymore because let's face it, a lot of the sort of all this collectible business moved online. So there are still old faithfuls that who are still making their rounds around the country, attending both large events and small events. So
Mhm.
they technically don't even have a vendor's room per se. It's more like a vendor's hall. So you have a part of the corridor
Wow.
that's occupied with about maybe 10, 15 vendors with their tables. Some are
Okay.
larger, some are bigger. And it's, as a matter of fact, Cherry Hill, there was at least, I think, 2 or 3 vendors who I've saw them in Vegas, and then they were Cherry Hill, and then they were in New York, and then they were in Chicago. So they're basically just all over the area on the East Coast and Midwest. So the thing that stood out compared to previous years, I've been to Cherry Hill last year, actually the previous 3 years, and then Chicago I skipped last year, but I was there previous 2 years again. Well, the 2 years before that. It felt larger in the sense that it certainly felt full because Cherry Hill, it's a little bit of an odd location. Technically you are close to a large city, which is Philadelphia. On the other hand, it's still pretty far away from anything of great interest. So the attendance, it felt like, well, this day was kind of barren in terms of both, number of people and number of guests. This year, no, not so much. It actually felt, like the place was pumping. People were enjoying themselves. A lot of people were dressed up. But for a small convention, it felt full. So that was probably the main difference. Other than that, I mean, I can't say that they had anybody unusual because it's pretty much all the old favorites from
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine and TNG primarily, and they were all headlined by William Shatner.
Right.
Was Cisco there in Cherry Hill?
No.
He has
And
no excuse. He lives so close.
I know, and I am curious if he just generally gone off the entire idea of doing conventions anymore. His last appearance was in Las Vegas in 2013, and nobody's seen him since.
He, I believe, had an I think
Health
he got
issues?
like a DUI or something.
Oh.
Yeah, that was in
Yeah. Was that
either
before?
2013 or 2014. That was in the
Okay.
news, but I recall
Yeah.
that 2014 he was supposed to make at least three convention appearances, at least at the creation events, and he canceled all 3 of them due to
Mhm.
health reasons.
There's a health reason.
So it's an unfortunate thing, and like I said, he's still working, he's still teaching. I know he had several voice projects recently,
Oh.
so he's out there doing his thing. But again, it could be just that maybe he doesn't want to do conventions anymore. I wouldn't presume to speak for him, but I'm hoping to see him
It would be
Yeah.
at some
nice,
conventions because he's a very interesting gentleman to speak with.
What I noticed, I think when you were at Cherry Hill, when was Cherry Hill? Was that the
Cherry
early?
Hill was let's see, there was Vegas, then I had
It was the week
weekend
before
break,
Mission New
thankfully.
York, yeah.
Yes, it was the weekend before Mission New York, so it was the
Okay.
end of August.
It must have been the Texas one, I think was one of them was before STLV. And I remember seeing friends posting photos. And one of the things that I noticed that's very different with STLV is like all the photo op prop stuff. They didn't seem to have any of that stuff at the smaller
No, and
convention.
as a matter of fact, I would think that it's probably I would guess a little bit cost prohibitive to ship some of this stuff around. I
Yeah.
mean, certainly,
Sure.
you're not gonna bring Guardian of Forever across the country. It just doesn't make any
Right.
sense. And additional thing is that there's simply not enough space. I'm racking my brain. I
Okay.
can't come up with a location where they could possibly put it in
Okay.
Cherry Hill or Chicago.
Yeah.
There's just, I mean, the largest area is the hotel lobby. And let's face it, we're not the only people staying in the hotel. So there's just no way that they would put something big that would attract a large crowd in the middle of hotel lobby.
I wondered because with the 50th, I thought maybe they would take like one thing to one of those conventions, but I guess if there's not space, then that's that.
Yeah, so we basically we created entertainment for ourselves. There was a lot of there was enough really good cosplay, both Cherry Hill and Chicago. As a matter of fact, one of the hosts in Cherry Hill said that he hasn't seen that much enthusiasm in terms of participating in the costume contest in several years. Like I said, that was the main thing. It felt like it was, there was real enjoyment. And I suppose everybody was buoyed because it is 50th anniversary, and maybe that's why there were more people and more costumes and more everything. But it felt wonderful. It felt like celebration.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm curious, like, so a lot of us that go to STLV, we go to the Masquerade Bar at night. We do that, go to dinner with friends. What is the life like outside of just the convention on those days? I know that Mission, New York.
Well, I would actually put Mission aside because Mission warrants a separate discussion.
Okay.
I actually found myself writing down little notes so I can remember all the things that popped into my head as I was, exploring the convention. As far as Cherry Hill and Chicago, it just basically limited to whatever's in the hotel. If you have a car and like a lot of people did in Cherry Hill, then of course in the evening, I know several folks had dinners arranged in Philadelphia. They would just drive across the river and go to a restaurant or whatever. Anything, those who wanted to stay in the hotel, it was just all self-organized. So both Cherry Hill and Chicago have their own restaurant, which is singular. You only have one. And yeah, you had groups of people getting together, sitting around the tables and just talking track, doing the same thing that we do in Las Vegas, even though we do have access to a little bit more entertainment in that regard. That's basically it. I don't think there was anything. They had the usual stuff, like karaoke party, the gold weekend ticket holders party, sort of similar in the same vein. Obviously not as big in size, but it's in the same idea through the convention. Other than that, there's really wasn't anything else.
Okay. So did we want to talk about Mission New York then, since you guys both went? And
absolutely. That was an interesting experience. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed listening the previous edition, the I forget the word for this, basically number 13, because I was curious to hear what Jeff had to say. And he actually brought up several points that I was thinking exactly the same thing as I was going around the showroom floor or attending the panels. That was actually the number one question that was asked of me, like we're comparing, contrasting all these different conventions. That those folks that I met there at Star Trek New York, or actually majority probably online. That was the first question. It's like, well, so how does this compare to Vegas? And, I thought about it, and you can't really completely compare them, even though I know several folks who will tell you right away, oh, this was so much better than Vegas. And others will say, well, this is kind of awful. I'm only going to Vegas.
Yeah.
So it was this thing. And my description is it was different. There are multiple categories, and almost in all of them, it was different. And different is very good. And I'll get to that. Let's see. The number one thing that has to be said, and this is kudos to both CBS and to all the people that they got involved in arranging this, the programming was absolutely outstanding. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen online the listing of all the panels.
Yep.
Oh, pardon me. It was unique. You had quite a spread in terms of topics. It was everything that was, they had NASA involved, they had actual scientists involved, they had fans involved, and of course they had the usual when you had cast panels and actors doing their Q&A panels. Programming was unique, and, you can't really say enough of it. And my only but with it is the way they arranged the scheduling, because in many ways this particular convention was very limited. It was like a mini New York Comic-Con. It was arranged as a Comic-Con. So they had the main stage, and they had 3 panel rooms. Well, panel halls, I suppose, mini halls. So at any given time, you had 4 things happening at the same time. Yeah. And just taking all the other factors out of attending a panel at a convention, if you thought that Vegas had conflict, this was much worse, because basically from the get-go, you know that you're going to be missing 75% of the stuff. Doesn't matter what you do. So it was a lot of, cringing and trying to come up with like, well, I really want to go to this panel, but at the same time, you have this thing. Like, for example,
Yeah.
for me personally, Sunday, they had a very, very fun Voyager panel with Brandon Braga there and Kate Mulgrew there. And it was just wonderful, wonderful fun. At the
Mhm.
same time, they had that magnificent Women in Track that
Yeah.
Amy did.
Yep.
That was just, like I felt like crying because, how do you choose? What do you
Yeah.
do? And in that case, I have to say that thank goodness we have social media because I found that this was, as far as this particular convention is concerned, that was the salvation. All the main track sites that we have, Track Core, Track Movie, Track News, they
Mhm.
all did amazing coverage. So I found myself actually during all these main panels, I found myself scrolling through the Twitter feed because they were reporting on what was happening in those other panels that I was not attending. So at least I knew sort of what was going on besides
Yeah.
what was happening at whatever panel that I was actually at. Uh, so that was this sort of this dichotomy where programming was just stunning, and
Yeah.
then it was this disheartening moment of realization that I actually can't make to all these wonderful panels that I really, really want to see.
Yeah.
Well, what are you gonna do?
Definitely. That's
Uh,
definitely I mean, that's nice. One advantage of having a convention that's 4 or 5 days long is you can spread things out a bit more than having to make choices. I mean, there's for most people, I hear that like at STLV, there's usually a schedule conflict here or there with a photo op
yeah,
or not, but it's not often panel against panel.
yeah,
Uh,
and of course, I mean, in this case, I mean, besides panel versus panel, you still had the same thing with photo ops and autographing. So
yeah.
it was just you were guaranteed that you're gonna come across a conflict at any given time.
Yeah.
One of those things that really I actually have my little notes here with me, so I'm trying to figure out what to bring up. So out of like this incredibly positive and unique things, like I said, I can't say enough about
Yeah.
programming. They had some magnificent stuff, really. Vendors room was fun, but they called it the show floor, so it
Right.
wasn't. They were actually using it. It's the part of Javits Center that typically houses the Artist Alley during New York Comic Con, so it's a fairly sizable building, and they had. I didn't count them up, but that was the most fun I've ever had actually exploring vendors room because they had variety. You didn't just have the usual. Okay, these people have
Right.
T-shirts and these people have posters, and here you have all the combination of the Thing Geek and all this recent collectibles and the Novus and everything. No, they had. So yes, you had the costume people. Both Anovus and Rubies were there, but they also
Oh,
had book vendors. They had, like you would go and you have the selection of all the recent track magazines, for instance.
oh, that's nice.
And so it was very nice. And of course, just to bring it up again, NASA just pulled all the stops for this convention. They had their own, and I can't even use the word booth for it because it was like a mini expo.
Oh, yeah.
If you recall, Mac occupied a very sizable portion
Yeah.
of the vendors room
Yeah.
in Vegas.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that and just a little bit bigger, actually.
Wow.
And wow. I mean, I saw that. I tried to catch, like to take pictures as much as I could because I'm like, this is something that has to be documented for future reference because this was not, something that I don't think I've ever seen anything like that at a convention, any convention,
Yeah.
a
I
Comic
saw
Con or whatever.
lots of selfies in the spacesuit.
Yes, that was absolutely fun. So that was programming in Vetter Hall, and then no, other than that, just generally the way it was organized, because Reed Pop really does well as far as like dealing with crowds. So they had very good crowd control. You never felt like okay, nobody knows where they're going or what they're doing. No, they had very well trained, very friendly staff, and they had signage all over the place. So that was
Right.
all extremely well organized. It was not just let's throw together a convention. No. This was all
Yeah.
very thought out, very well put together.
You just said something that I neglected to mention on the last time we talked about this is that was the staff that they had there, what seemed extremely friendly in
Yeah.
comparison to other conventions I've been to where people who are working, the con proper always seemed a little bit miserable or
Mhm.
upset. And when I went to the convention store, which was up on that upper level of that vendor
Hmm.
room area, the people behind that counter were so incredibly chipper. Which struck me. I was kind of taken aback by how upbeat and happy they were. It's like these people have been on their feet for 2 straight days on a concrete floor. I would have thought they'd be pretty miserable by now, but they were not.
No, if it's the same staff that they actually might be using for New York Comic Con, I think that our little convention probably would seem like nothing. And let's face it, I mean, Trek folk usually tends to be, like we're very accepting and we all tend to self-organize. So it's not like they're going to have an unruly crowd. No, everybody's good. If nobody knows what they're doing, people will just automatically start lining up and forming queues and just, by ninja, instinctively. But yeah, it was very well organized. Those are the points that, absolutely kudos. And like I said, it's something that we already talked about, the scheduling in the Comic-Con fashion. Obviously, there was no comfort of access, and I mean in the sense of getting to the panels.
Yeah.
All the main panels, especially the ones that were on the main stage, I don't know. Actually, I can't say all of them. I can only talk about either the ones that I've attended personally or I talked to someone in detail about it. So all the cast panels, for instance, Deep Space Nine, TNG, Voyager, they were full. And they were full to the point where they actually had waitlist queues standing outside.
Yeah.
So you can't just it's a trouble getting in and it's a trouble getting out because you can't just leave in the middle of the panel thinking, well, maybe I should go and check out what that panel is doing and then I'll come back. No, it's a one-way exit.
Yeah.
So once you leave, they're going to let somebody in and that's it. So it actually, I'm thinking, I think it was by the end of Saturday, they actually developed as bathroom rules. So it felt a little bit like high school. And the gentleman who I unfortunately, his name skips my mind right now, he was like a warm-up host between panels at the main stage theater. He announced it starting late Saturday and every panel on Sunday, saying that if you do need to use a restroom, you can only do it during the panel. And there's you have to use a little side exit where they either give you I didn't do that, so I don't know exactly how they would identify that you're the person using the restroom and then now you're coming back, maybe a pass of some sort or something. And that was the only way to do it. Otherwise you can't hold the seat, you can't, you're only supposed to be sitting in specific areas. That's another thing actually to bring up, they had the VIP tickets, which is what I had, 3-day VIP ticket. Technically speaking, there were reserved seats for VIPs, but they were not guaranteed seats. And what I mean by that, if I'm coming 20 minutes before the panel start, I am, here's the reserved area. This is where I'm supposed to be sitting. If I'm late, if I'm beyond that, and they're about to start the panel, and they see that there's still reserved seating available, they're going to say, okay, people in the general admissions, come on forward and fill up those seats. And that's it. So if you're running, I don't know, photo op, autograph, whatever, and you're a VIP thinking, I'm going to go up there and sit in the front 15, 20 rows, whatever it is, that's no longer the case because you're beyond that 20-minute deadline. Yeah. So it was this whole thing where at the end of the day, your convention experience is what you make of it.
Right.
And I enjoyed myself tremendously because once I figured out, I'm like, well, it is kind of like it's a Star Trek Comic-Con. That's what it is. And then, I basically dealt with it the way I usually do when I go to a Comic-Con rather than a creation event. So you still find a way of, okay, I'm doing this, I'm not doing that, sort of to work out the best way how to get to at least those panels that I really, really wanted to go to.
It makes me feel really grateful that the creation has a seat for everybody.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about if somebody found a way to somehow combine that comfort of, reserved sitting that Vegas does with the programming that, New York just blew my mind with, you would have the ultimate Star Trek convention. And of course, I don't think it's possible because if Vegas did that kind of programming, we would be paying through the nose. And if New York was trying to do reserved seating, then it would be really, really, I don't know, either really big or really small because they kind of constrained by sizes how they can do the panels. They try to basically, it's the same crowd control. That's why you have so many rooms and so many panels happening at the same time. You don't have a large concentration of people at any given place.
Yeah.
It's like these people will go there and these people will go there. Yeah, and of course, it's the fact that you're kind of forced of, okay, well, I was hoping to see TNG panel and I couldn't because the room was full. So now you're kind of forced to go and pick something else.
Yeah, I don't want that to be my convention experience ever. I mean, I know that's totally what, San Diego Comic-Con is and
Yeah.
everything, but that's just not for me. I did hear through the grapevine that they're going to try to push for a bit more diverse paneling next year at STLV, but we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah, you know what? It's a fun thing that you brought this up because that was in the back of my mind. I was thinking about this. If you remember, the Vegas convention in 2012, 2013, we actually had a very nice selection. We had, I think 5, 6 science-based. We had NASA
Yeah,
engineers coming into in the panel
yep,
and everything. So I'm kind of hoping that this is one of those reasons why I said the different is good because this is what's
yeah,
going to create the competition. When Destination London happened, the first one, that was also 2012. If you remember, the next year, immediately, Creation had The Guardian of Forever and
Mm-hmm.
the original series Transporter, so we could take pictures. And we had that wonderful exhibition of costumes
yeah,
in 2012, 2013, whichever one it
yep,
was. And that was kind of, I'm thinking, it came from Destination because they had, prop exhibition and they had
right.
costumes and they had all this stuff. So it's almost as if you have all of a sudden, oh, look at this brand new thing. And this is a Star Trek convention. So come on, Vegas, do not stagnate. And
Yeah,
it kind of gives a kick in the pants, so to speak. So I'm kind of hoping that, yes, now we've had this wonderful New York convention. Let's see what it's going to, if it's going to push the other conventions kind of to do better, to push
yeah.
themselves to make it more
Well, that
interesting, more variable.
and just people, because I saw someone, I think it was in the official convention group, STLV group. They were talking about, I think they were one of the hosts of the LGBT panel that they
Hmm.
had.
Yes, I
And
saw that post. Yeah.
yeah, that person was looking for who to contact at Creation. So I was like, hey, come join the group that we have. And then, everybody just make sure to contact Creation saying that you want these things. Really awesome that someone who is already involved is
Hmm.
looking to approach them. But fan demand too. I know a lot of people in my circle are really adamant about seeing those types of diverse panels that were at Mission New York at STLV. So the more feedback we give, the more pressure that puts on them too, and might incite some change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because otherwise, as I said, it's going to stagnate. And uh, I mean, we've
Mhm.
seen the obvious kind of. It's always exciting to see all these wonderful actors, but yeah, the programming kind of slid back towards this entertainment actor-based
Yeah,
panels,
Yeah.
rather than having something that would be it's still Star Trek. We're still, talking about all these wonderful things. And yes, why not, invite the actors and to have them be part of it. All these
hmm,
amazing women in track panels. Oh my God, that was
yeah,
amazing.
that was great.
I mean, long overdue as far as Vegas is concerned. Let's face it.
Hmm.
So absolutely. So let's see what's going to happen next year. Something's got to happen because now we
Yeah,
have 3 large Star Trek conventions, and
yeah.
the more the merrier, of course. And I'm hoping for really healthy competition.
Definitely. So I had one question.
Sure.
Since you go to a lot of these, and it sounds like a lot of the same guests go. I know, like Connor Trinneer and Dominic Keating are at a lot of them. A lot of the DS9 actors go to a lot.
Yeah, and
Do
I
you?
suspect that William Shatner was probably at every single
Yes, he.
convention
I
that he
think
was
he.
invited to.
I think that he was. So I know, like, you'll post your pictures that you're sitting on the different panels. Do you find that you still are learning stuff about the actors, or is it getting repetitive? Like, how do you keep going and seeing these panels?
At some point, I suppose it does get repetitive because, well, only that many things happen in the last, I don't know, say 20 years, if we're talking middle of TNG era series.
Hmm.
So, you can only talk about it, that many times before, and let's face it, people keep asking same
Yeah.
questions over and over again. So I suppose, yeah, there are certain stories that a lot of the actors tell. I'm like, okay, it's going to be the story about the elbow, or it's going to be the story about this thing. And I can probably tell it using the same words. But it's, I don't know, maybe it's me. I still find it funny. I mean, I still laugh. I still enjoy it. I still take pictures. On occasion, it's also funny just to observe how the actor would react because they're dealing with
Hmm.
different crowds in size. Sometimes you have crowds where it's like, oh, there's a lot of new folk, and not like in the sense of they came with JJ necessarily. I mean, JJ Abrams films, but it's they've been fans forever, but this is their very first convention.
Right.
As a matter of fact, this year there were a lot of new people. That was a little bit surprising. I don't know what happened. Is it because of 50th that suddenly gave them the push? Like, oh yes, let's go and celebrate at the convention. But it's wonderful to see. So it certainly, it gives the boost to conventions that this thing is going to keep going and going. I don't know. I'm just observing. It's fun, and I of course I go primarily to those panels, to those actors who are my favorites. It's still interesting, and somehow it doesn't. I don't know. So far, it's been 7 years of nonstop convention going. It doesn't feel too boring yet.
I love it. I love it. Jeff, did you have any other questions?
Sure. One thing that I remember talking to some people about at Mission New York, to get back to that for a minute, is they felt that the celebs at Mission New York felt a little more relaxed. Like when you ran into them in the hallways and things, they seemed to be more willing to stop and talk and maybe take a picture with you without you having to hand over money. Did you feel that the New York convention was a little looser than STLV or Creation Con in that way?
Actually, no, I can't say that. First of all, I haven't observed anyone actually walking through the halls. That's pretty much every single celebrity. They would finish, for instance, autographing or doing photo op, and boom, they would just, that's it. They disappear behind the curtains. So, generally speaking, what did it feel more relaxed than Vegas? No, I can't say that. I would say Vegas felt a little bit more like a celebration because, first of all, there were more people, and there were more people kind of. I mean, we still had a lot of newbies at Vegas this year, but there was a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time. So it was like a party, people getting together, meeting old friends. There was certainly many more costumes, just generally more. I found something I found a little bit odd in New York. You had a lot of folks, and I would say average age probably was somewhere in the 30s, 40s. Nobody was wearing Trek stuff. There were just like a lot of people wearing regular clothes.
Yep.
I mean,
noticed that
people
too.
even like jackets and ties. I'm like, it's shouldn't you track yourself up a little bit? It's a 50th anniversary in New York City. No. I mean, I have to say that the showroom floor, the store, they actually sold out of a lot of T-shirts. So I'm guessing a lot of you people probably raided the store completely because they simply did not have any of the T-shirts. But that was an interesting contrast compared to Vegas. All in all, no, I can't say it was different. It felt maybe a little bit freer in the sense of space because Javits is very big, and we barely occupied about a third of it, maybe size-wise, being all the rooms.
It was
maybe
mostly
even
the
less.
front of Javits, the front and the lower sections.
It was definitely felt like more space, simply because it is a dedicated convention center of very large size. Not like you have Rio. I mean, those are convention facilities, but nevertheless, it's all very close together compared to Javits. So no, I would just use the same thing. I would just say it was different. I can't say it was more relaxed or more anything like that. So another thing I meant to mention about the New York mission, the photo ops. That was certainly something that at the same time, it kind of felt similar to Vegas in the sense that it was very well organized and it moved fast. On the other hand, there were technological differences. Reed Pop employs a company called Epic Photo Ops, I think that's the full name, and they have the Instaprint technology, which is extremely convenient when you're dealing with very large volumes of, physical pictures that have to be printed. So you basically go through a little maze, have your picture taken with the guest, and you come out, and there it is. The picture is right there on the table. Nice. And of course, the biggest plus of this is that you can see that, if you blinked or if the guest blinked, and in that case, they will just lead you through the labyrinth back, and you can retake the picture again. If everything's fine, they just scan you out, and that's it. Everybody's done. You have the picture. So that was kind of an interesting thing. Other than that, since I don't, my pictures usually come out that way. I don't particularly care if I get the picture right away, but I know that a lot of fans appreciate that, you get the photo and you can go and, have it autographed right away.
Yeah. Was the quality pretty good? Like comparable to the photo ops at STLV?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I mean, I suppose those folks who are friends with me can sort of see because I posted a lot of the pictures on my wall on Facebook. But overall, I'd say it's about the same thing.
Okay, cool.
That's pretty cool. I didn't realize we had that kind of instant printing technology.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Vegas is large enough. I mean, I honestly don't know if there's a difference, in terms of price, of hiring somebody who has this sort of ability to do that. I've only seen it at Comic Cons. So, Montreal Comic Con had that. As a matter of fact, I'm fairly certain that it's the same company, actually.
Okay.
And then New York Comic Con now has it, obviously. So it kind of made sense that they would have the same company available to do the photo ops.
Do we know what the attendance was at Mission New York?
Somebody mentioned 4,500, but I don't know if it's
Okay.
realistic. Overall, it felt less than Vegas.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would say that Friday and Saturday actually seemed a little bit, especially Friday, felt a little bit empty. And then Sunday was just an explosion. As a matter of fact, it felt like, well, you actually are walking through a crowd. There was a lot of people on Sunday.
Huh. Interesting.
I was surprised at Saturday because when that was the only day that I could go, and it didn't seem as crowded as I thought it would be. I thought Saturday
not
would
at
be the
all.
big day.
Exactly, because typically that's the case for pretty much any kind of convention, whether it's just a signing event or a Comic-Con. So I don't know. Somebody said, well, maybe it's because you had the captains headlining Sunday, and you had some fairly major panels happening on Sunday as well. So that could be the case. I really don't know. That's just a supposition.
So speaking of panels, what panels did you actually get to?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see, they had total of about 60 to 65 panels, I think, and I managed to go only to about 10. So the ones that I did, yeah, I thought so. And I mean, I tried to, we already discussed this. It was very painful to actually choose out of this, amazing selection. I did go to several of the cast panels. So I did Deep Space Nine, I did Voyager, and those were fantastic. As a matter of fact, kudos to, Reed Pop for having wonderful hosts because there were some very good questions asked. It didn't feel, we're being asked the same questions over and over again. I did go to the NASA panel. That was mind-blowing. Unfortunately, I didn't stay for the whole thing. I had to leave because I had a photo op. But the part that I did see was absolutely wonderful. There was a lovely panel called Growing Up Track. And that one featured the Nimoy siblings, so both Adam and Julie Nimoy were there, and Rod Roddenberry. And that was a very, very nice panel because you had sort of this interesting dichotomy because obviously Adam and Rod had this similar, I suppose, manner in which they would relate to track because they grew up with it literally. And then you had this thing where both of them created this wonderful documentaries. And there was a difference because for Adam, I suppose he sort of had that understanding and he was a little bit part of a sort of like a fan himself from the beginning, whereas Rod never wanted to have anything to do with it when he was younger, and he sort of grew with it, as a matter of fact, Track Nation, he said, took him about 10 years to create, to film.
Wow.
So it was a very lengthy process that was also a process for him sort of discovering and understanding Track, and through that understanding his father. So he said a very lovely thing, as a matter of fact. He said as he was going through this process, at some point he sort of had this epiphany, after having all these throngs of fans basically approaching him and telling him how much what a difference Track made in their lives, and what his father, the great bird of galaxy, what he meant to millions of fans. He said, he had this epiphany where it's not that he lost his father to this franchise. It's more like he gained this millions of siblings, brothers and sisters through Track. I thought it was very lovely, yes. There were a couple of very interesting panels about sort of the novels. That was a separate thing that had multiple novel writers. I have to admit, I specifically avoided the Discovery panel because on one hand, I knew it was going to be a zoo getting in. And I had a suspicion that it was a little bit overhyped. I mean, even with the fact that we had Nicholas Meyer and Kirsten Beyer both present, it just logically, I mean, there's really not that much of information they could have possibly shared that we haven't heard before. So I thought, I'm gonna, use my social media feeds to kind of keep track of what's going on. And yeah, there was very limited information, new information that actually
Yeah.
came out of that panel. So those are the panels that I would say that really stood out. It would have been nice to see more. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Purely, time wise and
Yeah.
physically, you couldn't make it everywhere.
So one thing I did notice, again, this is another thing I forgot to bring up, but now that we're talking about the difference of the con and the relaxed or not relaxed nature, I got to Mission, New York on Saturday a little bit late. I got there around lunchtime, so the convention had been open already. And something that struck me as really odd was when I walked from Penn Station to Javits, so I walked along the road for a while to get there, and I noticed, even though it was early and the convention hadn't been open that long, I noticed a lot of people going the other way with merchandise from the Trek convention. I'm like, people are leaving already? I mean, it was barely open for 2 hours, and people are already walking away with bags of stuff, which, I mean, it's New York City, and there's no hotel attached, so maybe some
Yeah.
of them were going back to their hotel to drop stuff off, but it gave me this feeling that it was the approach that people were taking to it was a little bit different, and coming and going from the actual building a lot during convention hours.
Absolutely. I actually had a discussion with Larry Nemechek. Used a very interesting sort of a descriptor for that kind of convention. He said that this was convention. It sounds like it was a commuter con. Because precisely because you do not have a hotel attached, where it's like, okay, now I have way too many things, or I need to change my costume, or I need to do this, and then you run out however long the trip up the convention way is, but nevertheless we're still within the hotel. You go up, you whatever floor you are on, in whichever tower, drop stuff off, and then come back. And here, you basically, Javits is out there on the river, and then you have to take quite a long walk, or take a taxi, or take a subway in order to get back, and if you need to go back to the hotel. So commuter con, I kind of like that. It's just not to mention that, again, we had a lot of folks actually literally commuting from nearby states.
Yeah, I came by train, so
yeah.
And I guess now thinking about that, now that we talked about it, this made me realize that's probably what has a bigger impact on the amount of cosplay that happened at Mission New York, because I noticed a marked decrease in the number of people I saw in costume, especially the more intricate and detailed ones. Most of the people I saw were in the typical TNG uniforms or TOS uniforms, and people were asking me why I didn't wear anything. I said, "Are you kidding me? I have to ride on the train from New Jersey an hour and 15 minutes in costume, and then
exactly the reasoning why I was thinking about wearing my first contact uniform, and then I realized that even though it wasn't too hot, thankfully, that particular weekend, there's just no way that I'm first driving and taking the train and then walking. I mean, I could have done this. I have no problem wearing proudly my uniform out there in among muggles, but it was a bit too much. I don't spend hour and a half in Vegas getting from point A to point B to actually show it off. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the.
You guys are making me. You're making me think of when I went to Denver Comic Con and my Supergirl swimsuit, which is we have to get on the light rail, and it's I don't know, it's like maybe a 30-minute drive to actually get downtown. And then I walked around town in my Supergirl costume before I got to Denver Comic Con. It's just funny. I didn't think much of it, but definitely a few times I got some looks. But by the time we got there, like the whole train was everybody in costume.
Yeah.
So at least that was good. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting note, a reason as to why there was less cosplay.
I think you need an attached hotel to really see, especially the more intricate and involved cosplay that takes a long time to get dressed up in. I was not shocked that I didn't see any Borg.
Yeah,
because that stuff takes. I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, there was only one person who was actually dressed as a Borg Queen. And surprisingly, did she make the finals? Did you attend the costume contest on Saturday?
No, I didn't know.
There were actually some very nice costumes. I mean, those people who participated, a lot of fun, a lot of laughter. So costume contest was A+. They did a wonderful job. There were some couple of costumes that I've never even seen anything like that. So, but that was a lot of fun. And I would venture a guess that majority of the people who participated were probably locals.
Mhm.
So again, they were already in the city or very close to the city, so they could actually do that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. There may not have been a ton of cosplay, but what I saw in that costume contest was really good. So I was impressed to see some nice stuff there.
So you may have already given your answer to this, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway because I wanted to ask, since you've been to so many conventions this year, including Las Vegas, I think you answered it, but is there anything from any of those other conventions that you'd like to see brought to STLV? I know you mentioned the programming from Mission New York, but
Absolutely. That is the number one thing where there's definitely a need of more varied programming at Vegas.
Mhm.
It's a solid convention. It's basically in the class by itself because they're different. I already brought that up, but now that we have three of them, destination is a thing in itself. Now we have hopefully further missions that will be happening. I don't know if they're going to be in New York or in other cities,
Mhm.
and Vegas is Vegas. So it's a fixture and it needs to reinvent itself like Caesar's palace because they keep they keep adding, they keep changing, and that's how you grow and and stay out there.
Yeah.
So absolutely, that is the number one thing. I mean, everything else, we can talk about all the conflicts and how you organize autographs, and the thing is that nobody has a good system.
Mhm.
One way or another you're going to come across a problem, and you just I just accept it. I know that that's how it's going to work out if you're doing I don't know, autographing, say, at New York Comic Con. It's going to be a very long time if it's somebody popular, and you just deal with it. So in answer to your question, programming, absolutely.
so I had thought about, I think I had said this in the previous episode that I was looking for more diversity in some of the booths because I really enjoyed the NASA booth at Mission New
Hmm.
York. I'd love to see more science brought into STLV.
Definitely. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, they certainly had it. It was already happening, and then it kind of
Yeah.
dialed back and basically disappeared. I mean, we had one or two last year, maybe even just
Yeah.
one, and it was not like even specifically science. It was more from I remember there was a point. Oh, sorry, a panel. Was it sociology? I think Space Nine and Voyager. Dr. Putnam was making a
Gosh.
presentation, and that was basically it. Everything else was, you had same old cast panels, and
Yeah.
which was still fun. It's still fun, but the variety has to be there. There has to be
Yeah.
a choice of um, other things that relate to Star Trek, of which there's a legion.
Yeah. Well, I just keep saying, everybody, email creation and tell them what you want to see with paneling because the more they hear from us, the better. And hopefully we will see some of that next year. I hope.
Hope.
Um, so you talked a little bit about your first convention, but we do a segment called First Cons with all of our guests. And so I thought we would do that and just talk about what was your
Hmm.
first convention, what year, what was the experience like, and so forth.
All right. So my very first convention was in Parsippany, New Jersey, and I think it was called. They keep changing the names, but at the time, I think it was actually called the Northeast Convention or something like that. Northeast Convention, Parsippany, New Jersey. It's still creation,
Mhm.
just a different name. It was in August and had probably about 15, 16 guests. I
Okay.
think it was one of the first conventions that actually had J.G. Hurlsler and
Oh,
Robert O'Reilly dressed up
yep.
as Klingons.
Okay.
So that was like around the time when they first started doing that, headlined by Leonard Nimoy and Kate Mulgrew. So I just I was walking around, my eyes were like saucers, and it's a tiny convention because this particular it's in Hilton Parsippany, which is also not a very big hotel, so it's all very close together. You have I don't know 2,000 people maybe over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I was walking around because I've never experienced anything like this. And it was just, oh my goodness, I can just come up to a random person and ask them a question because frankly, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I remember I bought the autograph tickets. And it suddenly hit me that, oh, I actually don't have anything with me because I finally read the little note saying, oh, you must bring something for the
Right.
actor to personal to order, to sign. And so I looked at what other people were doing. I was basically following people around the vendor's room, seeing what exactly they were getting. One person bought the picture, so I bought the picture. And another person got the action figure, so I bought the action figure. So I was just basically mimicking the other fans, trying like, okay, well, I'm now part of the fandom. How fascinating. And then, after that, I'm like, okay, well, let me do something of my own, That's how when I kind of started to, looking at all the collectibles and kind of immersing myself into that side of fandom when all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, look at all these things that have Star Trek written on them, and I want them all. Yeah, I'm sure we've all been through that phase when you basically it's like, okay, lunchbox that says Star Trek on it. I need it, and I really don't. Now I can't get rid of it. So that sort of thing. So it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience. First of all, meeting. Well, for me, I specifically went because it was Kate Mulgrew and Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
So that was this whole experience of, my goodness, you can actually go up to a person, say a few words to them, shake their hand, get their autograph, take a picture taken. It was mind blowing.
Do you remember like any stories with anybody that were or any panels that you saw?
Well, as a matter of fact, the panel, if you recall, when they did the tribute for Leonard Nimoy, they actually used a recording where he's sitting on a sort of like a small chair, and there's this very strange background, kind of yellowish, as if like a material hanging behind. That was actually recorded at Parsippany in 2009. I was at that particular panel, and I didn't realize that they were recording it. But watching it during the tribute, it was like I felt like crying. Like I was actually there. There it is. Like the record. My very first convention, because that's why I went to see him, to see Kate, and it was incredibly touching.
That's pretty cool.
Well, Kate is one of my favorite actors, and just generally one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I actually, it's one of those things where it's like you meet your idol. I don't remember meeting her. I remember when it happened. I can even tell you what time it happened. It was sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. on a Saturday. But, it was one of those like, oh my God, my brain just shorted out. I was so excited. So, yeah.
That's cute. I love it. So excited that you don't remember it now.
No. So I'm like, oh, what happened? And then, look, at least I have a picture. It happened during the photo op. I'm like, I look a little bit manic, but, it happened here. I have the proof.
That's the same exact thing that happened to me when I got my Shatner photo op. And I can barely remember what it was like to stand there, but if you look at the photo op, you can totally tell on my face that I was like deer in headlights, like, oh my God, I'm standing next to William Shatner.
Exactly.
I think we need to do like a post where it's just all those types of pictures, like your first encounter with this or that celebrity. That'd be funny.
But it's wonderful. It's a wonderful memory because, now I look at it, I'm like, now you kind of feel comfortable. We've been doing this for so many years, and it's kind of nice to go up and you actually have, normal conversation, because these are real people and they're enjoying themselves as much as I'm enjoying, and, you can have wonderful conversations. And but at the time it was like, oh my God, and that's it. It's just gone. I think I spent about 10 minutes kind of circling around photo op. I'm trying to remember, did I say thank you? Was I even looking in the camera? I can't, it's all gone.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Jeff, any questions about Marina's first con?
Sure. Did you meet anyone at that first convention that you're still friends with?
Oh, yes, very much so. Majority of the people who are part of the New York away team, they were all there. And so for a while, I kept seeing them. I'm like, I recognize, I have a pretty good visual memory. So I'm like, oh, I've seen that person already, and that person, and I keep seeing them year after year. And then, obviously you start talking, and then we have Facebook and this and that. And now, we have all these get-togethers in New York every once in a while when we have, New York away team gets together for our usual. We do it, about 5-6 times a year, I think, plus holiday parties. Yes, it definitely. It's a wonderful thing, and the folks at the pub are loving us because, aside from the fact that you all of a sudden you have 20-30 people showing up and bringing business to your business, but it also, I think, a lot of the other folks who come to the pub seem to be entertained by, all of a sudden you have folks in Starfleet uniforms sitting in the corner talking about Star Trek.
I'm totally enjoying that.
Yeah. definitely.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I know that that was one of the things at Mission New York that I saw that it looked like Michael Wen had organized a party for everybody.
That's it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Alonis. That was our usual hangout, and they brought the uniform for the owner, so he was walking around enjoying himself. We'd all take selfies, and they had even themed like a. I don't know about food because I didn't have anything. I was just drinking, but they had the Star Trek themed drinks that somebody made up, and that was just wonderful. I had something called Ferengi Fizz. Lovely, wonderful experience. Everybody had a lot of fun. So, yeah, speaking about things that happened after hours, that was one of them.
Yeah.
I know that this. I forget the name of the group, unfortunately. Darlene, one of the cosplayers and fellow fans. I know she was talking about there was a party on Lower East Side on Sunday, which unfortunately I could not attend. I know there was one party, I think called We Want War, something like that, Friday night, that they even had Nana visitors as a guest. So there was stuff after hours was all organized by fans, and it was wonderful. And of course, New York has a lot to offer. So once you're done, the city's your oyster.
Yeah, those away mission groups, there's several of them. I know there's the New York one. We tried to start one out here and it wasn't super successful, but maybe we should bring that back up sometime.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing because let's face it, I mean, it's a good way to deal with PCD. You have this huge break for some people between conventions, and that's a way certainly to, hang out and still have active track in your life. So it's a wonderful invention. I know several. California. I know there are several active ones in Arizona. That's for sure. California, certainly.
Awesome. I think that we'll revisit that down the road. It's a good subject to talk about a little more deeply.
Yeah.
So, being your first convention and you were buying up all sorts of things for people to sign, did you make any other big purchases there from some of the vendors?
Yes, I discovered Lightspeed. Yeah, that was a big thing. But I was standing in front of all those gorgeous, gorgeous lithographs, and I was like just drooling. So my very first purchase was, and it was, you know what? I can't remember on top of my head how much I paid for it, but that was like the single largest track-related purchase I had at that time. It was a wonderful. What's the name of the artist? Ralph Glass, a wonderful lithograph, Voyager cast from seasons 1 through 3. So it has Jennifer Leon on it instead of Jerry Ryan. And I still have it. It's still there, framed. That was the big thing. And then, year after year, other things would disappear. And then it's a little bit more, I wouldn't call it necessarily sophisticated, but I've become much more selective as far as what I look at and purchase. And right now it's very difficult. Let's face it, all the new, all these amazing licensed products that were released, especially like in the last year or so. Oh, wow. What a selection.
I've had to pace myself. I set aside a savings for when I go to STLV or any convention. And I've gotten much pickier and I don't have space for knickknacks anymore and for art, unfortunately.
Oh, I hear you.
So I'm trying to think of things that I had got, but like I bought dresses mostly. That I can wear when I go, but I've definitely gotten much more selective over the years. Just lots of cool stuff. And I order a lot of stuff online before. So it's stuff I've gotten and then they'll have it at the convention. I already have it. But like those cat toys.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing. And actually I spoke to the gentleman because I haven't seen anything like this before. I haven't seen it online. He is one of the licensed distributors, and he was actually both he wasn't in Vegas, but he was at Cherry Hill, he was in Chicago, and he was at New York. And as a matter of fact, by the time he hit New York, he said, he was, I don't know if there was another convention intervening between Cherry Hill and that one, but most of his stock was actually gone. So for instance, all the cat toys were gone because that was just, an explosion of interest, and everybody was so excited that, oh, look at this. That had it was released extremely, extremely recently, which is why we haven't seen it even online yet. So he sold his entire stock of all the stuff that he had.
So cool.
Yeah, wonderful. But yeah, I totally hear you. I mean, I have a lot of things in my collection that I have to get a box and put it carefully in a box, and I have several boxes stacked up in the corner of the room like that because there's no longer room on the bookshelves. There's no longer room in the closet. I mean, I'm literally in the situation where I can say I've been there, done there, and I have literally over 40 T-shirts. So
yes, you do. You have quite the astonishing T-shirt collection.
Yeah,
You only rival Eric Allen Hall because he does his annual.
Well, no, but he has the vintage ones. He has the vintage ones too. So yeah. But yeah, somehow I pulled it all out as I was preparing for Vegas, and yeah, I realized that I really need to be careful because even to me now it looks a little bit too much. It's a little weakness. I just, sometimes you find a really cool T-shirt and it's inventive or funny or something, and it's like you gotta wear it. You gotta represent. And let's face it. I mean, people enjoy this. You walk around and people compliment you on your T-shirt or you compliment on whatever they are wearing. Part of the experience.
Very much so. Got to wear my space pants, match my space pants and my tank top, and yeah, I had to stop buying myself T-shirts because I have just way too many, and it's got to be a really impressive T-shirt for me to buy these days, and really soft. So like the Shop LLAP T-shirts, yes.
Oh yeah, God, I love them. Also, I really enjoyed the We Love Fine T-shirts. As a matter of fact, I think the company is called Mighty Fine, but their website is called We Love Fine.
Yep.
Those are really good quality T-shirts. Not to mention this whole thing that they did with this fan design.
Yeah,
magnificent. That just wonderful. It's all part of the celebration of the 50th anniversary. I couldn't wait to get one of these.
Yep, it was very cool. I know Claire got a bunch of them. I didn't get any, but it's really cool to see people like Aaron Harvey, our friends up there, submitting designs. And...
I was actually Garrett Wong. I mean, he's had his. I don't know if the company's still active, because he was just basically. I think he said he was selling whatever he had during the convention. I saw him in Cherry Hill. He stopped me because he saw one of the Will of Fine T-shirts. And he said, where is this coming? This is an unbelievable T-shirt. It's the one that has the outline of the ships and captains on it.
Yep.
And I explained to him, gave him the name of the website because it's brilliant design. Yeah. Wonderful stuff.
Yeah, it was really cool to see that. I love all this 50 celebration. I don't want it to stop ever.
Well, let's see. How much did they spend on 25th anniversary of TNG? About a year and a half, at least conventions, because that's how long you had the conventions that had, it's 25th anniversary of TNG in them. So I'm thinking 50th is really, really big. I'm sure it's not over, and we're going to see it well into the next year.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So now we're getting close to wrapping up. So Marina, I had two things that I wanted to ask you about before we close up, if you've got one more minute.
Sure.
So do you recall, since we're still kind of talking about your first con here, do you remember what it was? Do you have a particular moment where it clicked for you and you're like, this is it for me, I'm hooked on these?
You know what? Leaving probably Sunday. I was there only Saturday and Sunday, that very first convention, and I was leaving, and there was this absolute sensation of loss. I was like, this was wonderful. This was a party. You folks enjoying themselves, and such an incredible thing that it means something, and then the party's over. And then I was like, well, when is the next one? And I have to go to another one. It can't stop. So I think that was that thing where, it's like, okay, convention is over. And now, you do feel that sense of loss. So I think that was the moment. And after that, it was just, one thing after another. Next year, Vegas happened, and then it kind of ballooned from 1-2 conventions to, on average, I think I do about 4 or 5 a year. Right now, last year and this year were, actually, no, not last year. 2014 I had probably about 8. And this year I have, New York Comic Con's going to be there, so 7. I'm only doing one day because New York Comic Con is actually, I feel, they have a lot of people. It's a very large crowd. It's extremely enjoyable, but going through, it's no longer a vendor hall. It's no longer a vendor room. I don't know. It's a vendor center. I don't even know what to qualify it as because it's just so huge. So it's an experience just to go look at the vendors, look at the artists. But I always do just one day because one day is enough.
Yeah, definitely.
It's big.
So in closing, do you have any advice for would-be con goers or con newbies who may be thinking about going to their first Trek convention or any
Um,
convention?
well, we live in an information age, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of people that you can ask questions if you're really not sure how it works, where you go, how you do it, And let's face it, I mean, some people, they don't choose to, look into this themselves. They don't know where to look for the information. So, don't be afraid to ask then. Because somebody's going to point you out and say, okay, read here, here are the rules. This is the thing that you do. We all like to share, especially once we've been in the same situation where you really didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just do planning. Don't just buy the tickets and then show up and then you're completely lost because you don't know what you're doing, or the person that you really wanted to see apparently canceled and you don't understand what happened and you're really disappointed. Do preliminary planning. Look into what's what, who's who. So that you have a little bit of an idea what's happening, and then enjoy yourself. So that's really it.
Fantastic advice. So Marina, it has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, I've met you several times and Heather's known you for a long time, so it's great to finally have you on the show. Thank you for spending so much time with us and giving us so much great detail about all of these conventions.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure, and but hope we'll do something else in the future.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You're welcome to come back anytime you like. So I'm sure we'll have a slot for you in the very near future.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so we will talk to you again very soon. Thank you once again for stopping on the show. And guys, stay tuned. Heather and I are going to be talking about our live tweet participation for the Love of Spock documentary in a couple minutes here. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. It's Heather and Jeff again. And we just got done talking with Marina about all of these various conventions that she's been to and how they compare to STLV. So I hope you guys enjoyed that segment. And we are going to continue talking about our participation in the We Are Colony live tweet event for the debut of the Love of Spock documentary film. And if, in case anybody doesn't know what this film was, this is a documentary about the life of Leonard Nimoy, directed by Adam Nimoy. It runs about 110, 111 minutes and features a lot of Star Trek celebs as well as Julie Nimoy and, of course, our wonderful friend Danny Schwartz. And it had its world premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival and won an audience award at the Fantasia Film Festival. And it's currently available through wearecolony.com, and some of the other streaming outlets out there happen to have it as well. And another nice benefit of this movie is you may recognize two of our Tricorder Transmissions hosts actually appear in it briefly. So Heather Barker, who's here with me, is in it, and our Atavachron co-host and frequent guest Claire Little is also in it. Heather, do you remember doing that?
Yes. Yes, I do. The whole thing of being in it is just really awesome, and I get kind of bashful about it, even though I don't talk. But it was just so cool. Of all the documentaries for me to get to be in, it's the Leonard Nimoy one. It blows my mind. But yeah, I think it was, gosh, like I think it was Sunday of STLV last year, 2015. And we were just walking around in the vendor's room, and a couple of guys approached us and asked if we wanted to be, I don't remember if they said it was for Love of Spock. I assume that they did, but they might have just said a documentary. But they did ask us about Leonard Nimoy and Spock, so they must have. Anyway, Claire gave her wonderful, eloquent response about Spock's otherness and how we all can identify with it. And then I talked about, my dog dying the day before Leonard Nimoy did. And, my campy little story about how that helped get me through both of their deaths because I got to think about them together. So of course, Claire's much more eloquent sentiments were included. And I'm so happy that they were, because it's just so cool. And people were telling me about it. I think the Kickstarter, they did some preview shows like months ago, like earlier this year. And so we knew about it then because people saw us and like, is that you? And we were like, yeah, oh my gosh. So it was really cool. But then actually sitting down and seeing it, I kind of jumped out of my chair a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh. It was cool.
It was pretty awesome. You guys were also in cosplay, so it was really neat.
Yes, and I look somewhat different, and I mentioned that on my own Facebook page because I've been getting messages like, "Was that you?" And yeah, my hair was black then, and I was a little heavier, but it's still me. Um, so I kind of fangirl over like being included as a fangirl. It's silly, but it's really cool, guys. I just can't help it.
Yeah, so keep your eyes open when you watch the film for Heather and Claire popping up in there. It's pretty cool. We'll put a screenshot of their little scene up on the website for you guys to check out. And it was also, of course, included in our live tweet stream. And one of the really cool things that happened afterwards, by the way, I'm skipping to the end first here, that We Are Colony posted a wrap-up, a highlights blog, and I was very flattered by the fact that our tweet from the Tricorder Transmissions Twitter is the first one that they listed there. So that was kind of a nice little treat too, that we could be part of this. And we're really grateful, by the way, to We Are Colony. If anybody out there from the companies listening, we're grateful for being invited and allowed to take part in this, because both of us are huge Leonard Nimoy fans and huge Spock fans. So really great to be able to participate in this with a lot of our other podcasting community members out there. So it's really cool to be part
I
of it.
think our personal relationships with the character Spock, and how we view Leonard Nimoy have only intensified. Having made friends with Danny and meeting her mom and everything. Very near and dear. So anytime that I saw, like when Julie was talking, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then when I could find Danny in the pictures, I was just like, oh, it's Danny. So silly.
It was, it's kind of cool to see people that we know, besides, of course, you and Claire in the movie, people we've talked to and people we've met at conventions and people we've had on Shore Leave.
Yep.
So very, very cool. And, in case anybody doesn't realize, both of us were tweeting. Heather and I were both live tweeting. I was live tweeting from the Tricorder Transmissions podcast Twitter account, and Heather was, of course, using the Shore Leave account. So pretty cool that we were both kind of tweeting different things while we were watching the exact same movie and having different reactions to scenes.
Yeah, it was really neat because a few other podcasters, I think some of the women at Warp got to watch it too. And so it was nice for me because since I didn't get to go to Mission New York, and I'm not going anywhere for this, but I kind of got to participate in something with my friends. And that made it even more special.
Yeah, it was really a community event because so many of our podcasting brothers and sisters were out there as a part of this. So it was kind of neat that We Are Colony reached out to so many of the community podcast members. And I saw Jara was posting quite a bit about it. That was really, really fun. And I remember retweeting some of our own listeners who were watching along with us. So much fun to see how much community you can build with a Twitter campaign like that. So I have a feeling that it was very, very successful.
It was a lot of fun. I loved it. Great thing to do on a Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had, looking back through my stream of tweets here to try to drum up some of the memories of all, it seemed to go by so fast. But early on in the documentary, I remember just being kind of blown away by the early acting clips of Leonard Nimoy in other roles before Spock, because I guess typecasting really is a thing, and in my own mind I always see Nimoy as Spock, but seeing him play other roles was like, oh my god, I've totally forgot he was in all these other things before Star Trek. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was really neat. I think it's great because he's such a good actor. I mean, he's not just our Spock. He's not just that. He was an actor, and he was a prolific actor. And even in those short clips, I think that the power of his acting was very evident. And it's great because I think a lot of people don't really know. It's for me. I've read his books, and I've read Shatner's book about him, and I've read just so many different Star Trek books. So I know a lot about, what went on while they were filming and everything else. But any little insight that we see is just really, really cool. And you don't see all that. That was the thing for me, is like the footage they were showing was just so unique, especially the home videos. That stuff is priceless. And I I walked away from this just grateful because we got to see those things. There's the picture. It's notorious of where Adam Nimoy, as a young boy, was dressed up as Spock, and he comes onto the set, or I think he's in like a green and white striped shirt or something. But he comes onto the set to surprise Leonard Nimoy, and I've only ever seen a picture of that, and they had video footage of that moment, and that was just so cool.
That was
So
really
cool.
cool. Yeah, it's kind of older, lower quality video, but you can definitely see what's going on. And Nimoy as Spock is sitting in the captain's chair, and the turbo lift behind him opens up, and here comes little Adam to surprise him, and it was very endearing.
Yeah,
to see that
very
happen.
cool.
So very adorable. Very adorable. I'm glad that they included that in there. And
yeah, it outside of the, you don't really necessarily get it from the documentary, but if you've listened to Adam Nimoy talking about the development of the documentary, we know that he and Leonard Nimoy started it together. And so it was supposed to be about Spock, and it was supposed to be about Leonard Nimoy, and then it evolved when he passed away, and very much became a story about their relationship. And I think including that, for me, I like these personal relationships. And even though they both had struggles, I connected with that. And I respect it very much, that Adam would talk about his difficulties alongside his dad's. And so one of the things that I found especially priceless, as I said before, was the letter that Leonard Nimoy had written to Adam, and reading passages from that. Again, just like that home video footage, it's just something so special and so dear. And I'm grateful to Adam for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I am too. And and exposing private things like that to the public is it's very difficult thing to do. I know I have a lot of trouble in my personal life sharing some things publicly like that. So I have to really applaud Adam for putting that stuff out there, and exposing some of the maybe some of the darker sides of their relationship with the fans of people who love his father and the characters that his father played. And it's always a risky thing to put that kind of stuff out there, but it definitely belongs in this documentary, and gives you a really great picture of Leonard Nimoy's life. And I think it's absolutely a brilliant film.
Yeah.
One thing that I really loved seeing in this doc, we're not going to do a lot of spoilers here, so I'm not going to throw out specific moments, but I love that they had so many of the Kelvin timeline actors doing some remembrances about the original series cast members that they were playing in the new films. I love to see the fact that they all have a reverence for the original series. They're not just coming in and playing a new role. They actually have some experience and have a bit of fandom themselves.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think Carl Urban is a shining example, as well as Simon Pegg. But that was really neat. I'm glad that they included them. I know that he touched their lives immensely since he was in 2 of the films with them. But that was really neat to see. I really like hearing from them. We don't always get a lot. I mean, when we talk about the new movies, we're listening to them and seeing that. But when we're talking about the older Star Trek, you don't always get appearances. So that was really cool.
No, absolutely. And there were 2 other appearances in this that really, really touched me, and one was Jim Parsons. I'm a big Bang Theory fan. Like it or not, I'm a huge fan. And they do a lot of references to Star Trek on that show. And Leonard Nimoy appeared as a voice actor on that show in one episode that I really love, where Sheldon gets a transporter toy, and Leonard gets the same one, and he breaks Leonard's toy, and then a Mego Spock figurine is talking to Sheldon and trying to make him see the error of his ways. But I love that episode because Leonard Nimoy's doing this wonderful voice acting, and it's brilliant. But they had Jim Parsons on to talk about Spock and Star Trek, and I thought that was a really nice touch to have him
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, it really shows. I mean, it is a geek show, so
Yes.
again, it's our niche, but it does show, how far he has reached and how he's still relevant in our time.
Oh, for
Very
sure.
much so, very much so.
Definitely. And of course, I have to mention that Neil deGrasse Tyson made a brief appearance and mentioned Devil in the Dark. So I had to throw that out
Yes,
there.
he did. Yes, he did. Did you hear that, Jim?
Yeah.
Jim and Jeff's favorite episode, also Leonard Nimoy's favorite episode.
And
Yeah, I think I was just trying to go through my own tweets and see what stuck out the most. I think that kind of skipping to the end, and I'm iffy about whether I want to talk about it or not, but there's a tribute at the end that is really powerful. It happened at an annual festival. I'll say that. That way it's not too spoilery, because for me it was really powerful. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So that it happens. I mean, it's an annual event, and it isn't one where I would expect to see a Spock presence or a Leonard Nimoy presence.
Oh, okay.
And certainly not. I mean, I don't know. I have friends that attend STLV and attend that event, but I never thought that I would see a response like we did. And I don't want to say too much because it was just such a cool moment, and I don't want to take that away from anybody who's going to watch it.
Definitely watch it, though. It is so worth seeing.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about it either because it's kind of an emotional thing. But no, Heather's definitely on point. Definitely on point here.
It was emotional. And, again, you and I just have this special connection with Spock, with Leonard Nimoy, with the Nimoy family. And I know that makes it super extra special for us.
Yes.
But most of the people that I've spoken to think it's probably, if not the best documentary, Star Trek, dark documentary in recent times, then it's up there in the top 5.
I would definitely rank it very, very high on my scale as well. And in closing for me, I have to say one more thing about this documentary that got me emotional, and it may not apply to everybody out there, but as Heather said before, there was footage that is used in this that was shot at STLV. Mm-hmm. So every time I saw clips in this documentary that depicted sections of the Rio, I immediately recognized them. And I was like, oh my God, this takes me back. In fact, one of the tweets I tweeted from the Tricorder account was the shots of STLV take me back and how much I miss my Trek family. So
it's true. I felt kind of bad because my Miramani tribe, at least I think my ladies in Kirok, were in that group shot. They do like a group shot. It was a TOS cosplay. And I'm pretty sure that day I had to go turn into a Starfleet cheerleader. So I missed out in being in that big photo op, which I'm really sad about, because that footage was actually used in one of the other like Star Trek 50 documentaries. I think one of the History Channel or Smithsonian Channel. Same footage was used in that, or definitely the same event, same angle. Really cool. But yeah, and come to think of it, there were several times in 2015 where I was in the vendor's room and we saw Adam Nimoy walking through filming those little bits when he was in the vendor's room. I remember like Brian Knack was over standing with the t-shirts, like looking at t-shirts, and then here comes Adam Nimoy. So I'm like watching them film Adam, and then like Knack is over there figuring out whether he's going to buy this shirt. It was funny. But I have very vivid memories of doing the interview and of seeing Adam and him filming the entire time he was there, really. So to finally get to see this film come to fruition, and be able to do it from home, tweeting alongside my friends, was just a super great thing. And I'm very grateful to We Are Colony. I'm grateful to Love of Spock for working with We Are Colony. And to Adam Nimoy and everyone who worked to make this a reality. I think it was great, and I will watch it again and again.
Yes. And so I think you summed it up very well. So I don't think I need to add too much more to that. So yeah. So and thus ends another episode of Shore Leave, our 14th episode, and no doubt we'll be back with episode 15 in the
Oh
very
yeah.
near future, probably a couple of weeks from now, and there may be a very special surprise coming in that episode. So
Yeah.
we're not tipping our hands quite yet on what this is going to be, but just so you know, we're working on some awesome new content that will bridge the gap between STLVs, and we plan to keep Shore Leave up and running year round. So
Yep.
stay tuned for some of our very cool new content. Anything you want to say before we wrap up, Heather?
I don't think so. Should we talk about where to find us online?
Absolutely. So you can find our show online at the tricordertransmissions.com. You can find us on Twitter at Shore Leave or at TTT_pod. We have two different handles, one specifically for this show. You can also find us on Facebook.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you want to check out our unofficial Facebook page for the Las Vegas convention, I can never remember the order of the words. For the love
I
of God.
know. Now I've cursed you with it. It's the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention on
Thank
Facebook.
you, Heather. Heather and I are both admins of that group, and we have a wonderful family there who talk about the convention and Star Trek stuff all year round. So if you want to join up in that group and talk with us, we're always there and looking forward to hearing from you. And we also have merchandise available on redbubble.com. If you're a fan of the Tricorder Transmissions, log on to that site and look up our stuff. You can also get a link to it from our website as well, and our personal Twitters if you were looking for us individually. I am J_Benj, Benj, J_Benj on Twitter. And Heather, where can they find you?
Sketching Venus on Twitter.
Ah, yes, Sketching Venus on Twitter. And if you would be so kind, if you have time, if you would want to jump over to iTunes and give us a rating, even just a star rating. You don't feel the need, you have to type a bunch of stuff up if you don't want to, but if you could just give us a quick rating on iTunes, that would really, really help us out in building our audience and getting us up in the rankings. So thanks so much in advance for doing that. And that about wraps up the show for this week, and hopefully we'll see you again in a couple weeks with another brand new episode of Shore Leave. Thanks for tuning in.